Most relationships don't end with an argument. They don't end with betrayal. They end quietly. At first, nothing feels wrong. You still live in the same house. You still share meals. You still say goodnight. But something changes. And it happens so slowly that you barely notice it while it's happening. In the beginning, you couldn't get enough of each other. You listened. You asked questions. You noticed small things. Time felt unlimited then. But life arrived. Work became heavier. Responsibilities multiplied. Stress followed you home. And without deciding it consciously, you started giving your best energy everywhere else. At work, to problems, to survival. At home, you gave what was left. Conversations became shorter, not because you didn't care, but because you were tired. I'll talk tomorrow, you thought. There will be time later. Later became routine. Days passed, then weeks, then years. You still loved each other. But love without attention began to feel like distance. You stopped asking how they really felt. They stopped telling you. Silence didn't come suddenly. It grew. At some point, you noticed something else. Touch became rare. Not because attraction disappeared, but because closeness requires presence. You turned away at night. Sometimes out of habit. Sometimes out of exhaustion. Physical intimacy faded quietly. And with it, a part of the connection you never talked about. Needs went unspoken. Frustration stayed inside. Not because you didn't want each other, but because neither of you knew how to reach the other anymore. If you have children, the shift felt even stronger. Life became logistics, schedules, responsibilities, sacrifice. You became a team for survival, but stopped being partners in connection. You told yourself this was normal, that this is just how life goes. But deep down, something felt unfinished. You missed being seen. And maybe they did too. The most painful part wasn't the distance itself. It was how normal it became. No one warned you that relationships don't break from one big moment. They erode from neglect that feels reasonable at the time. Skipping one conversation, avoiding one uncomfortable topic, choosing comfort over honesty. Again, and again, and again. One day you notice it clearly. You're sitting next to someone who knows your history but not your inner world anymore. You didn't fall out of love. You drifted. And drifting doesn't feel dramatic. It feels quiet. It feels familiar. It feels safe. Until it isn't. Because distance doesn't announce itself. It waits. And when you finally feel it fully, you realize how long it has been growing. This is the moment that matters. Not the moment of regret, but the moment of awareness. Because distance can still be crossed if it's noticed early enough. Attention can be rebuilt. Connection can be restored. But only if you stop pretending that time will fix what presence is meant to heal. Relationships don't need perfection. They need intention. And the question isn't whether it's too late. The question is whether you're willing to notice before silence becomes permanent. Awareness is uncomfortable. Because once you see the distance, you can no longer pretend it isn't there. You start noticing things you once ignored. The way conversations stay on the surface. The way silence fills the room faster than words. You notice how often you reach for your phone instead of reaching for each other. At night, you lie next to someone whose presence feels familiar, but whose inner world feels far away. And sometimes, you wonder when that distance began. It wasn't one moment. It was a pattern. Small choices made daily. Choosing rest over connection. Avoiding difficult conversations. Telling yourself this phase would pass on its own. But phases don't end by themselves. They end when someone decides to face them. In long relationships, especially in marriages, life demands a lot. Bills, children, work, responsibility. Love slowly gets pushed to the background, not because it matters less, but because survival feels more urgent. And somewhere along the way, you stop asking questions that once felt natural. How are you really? What do you need from me? What are you afraid of lately? Without those questions, connection weakens. Emotional closeness fades first. Physical closeness often follows. Not always because desire disappears, but because intimacy requires safety. And safety comes from feeling understood. When misunderstandings pile up, when feelings stay unspoken, touch begins to feel distant instead of comforting. This creates confusion. You may still want closeness, but you don't know how to ask for it anymore. So you wait, and waiting quietly turns into resentment. You might tell yourself that this is just how long relationships are, that passion fades, that connection changes, and some change is normal, but disconnection is not. The most dangerous moment in a relationship is not conflict, it's indifference, because conflict still means engagement. Indifference means emotional withdrawal. You stop fighting, you stop explaining, you stop trying, and the relationship keeps functioning, but it stops growing. From the outside, everything looks stable. From the inside, something feels hollow. This is where many people stay for years. Not because they are unhappy enough to leave, but because they are not brave enough to address the truth. They tell themselves that tomorrow they'll talk, that next week will be different. Those things will improve when life slows down, but life rarely slows down on its own. One day, something small triggers a realization, a look, a comment, a moment of unexpected loneliness, and you feel it clearly. The distance is no longer subtle. This is the moment that defines everything. Not because it's too late, but because this is when honesty becomes unavoidable. You can either continue drifting, hoping comfort will protect you from pain, or you can choose discomfort now to avoid regret later. Reconnection does not start with grand gestures. It starts with attention, with choosing presence even when it feels awkward, by asking questions even when you're afraid of the answers, with listening without preparing a defense. It requires courage to admit that something important has been neglected, but neglect acknowledged is the beginning of repair. Many relationships don't end because love disappeared. They ended because love wasn't maintained, and maintenance isn't romantic. It's intentional, it's consistent, it's sometimes uncomfortable, but it's also what keeps the connection alive. The quiet truth is this: distance grows when no one interrupts it, and closeness returns when someone decides that the relationship matters enough to be chosen again. Not once, but daily. The question isn't whether your relationship has changed. All relationships do. The real question is whether you will stay present enough to grow together, or distant enough to wake up one day wondering how two people who once felt so close became strangers without ever saying goodbye. And maybe the hardest part is accepting this truth, that no one is coming to save the relationship for you. Time will not slow down. Life will not create the perfect moment. Connection survives only when it is chosen deliberately, not when it's convenient, not when it's easy, but when it matters. Because one day you will look back at this version of your life and you'll realize that this moment, right now, was the moment where everything could have changed. Not by doing something dramatic, but by doing something honest, paying attention, speaking up, being present, before silence feels normal, before distance feels permanent, before later becomes never.